Houston Texans, Houston Rockets, Houston Dynamo, Houston everything, Houston born and raised, H-Town Rebel Space Cadet Sports.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, folks of all stripes, and distinguished guests, put your hands together for the Space Cadet Sports Podcast. Houston, we have Paul Salazar Jr.
Hey y'all, welcome back to the Space Cadet Sports Podcast, your Houston sports podcast for die-hard Houston sports fans from a die-hard Houston sports fan. I'm Paul Salazar Jr., your favorite die-hard Astros fan podcaster. Woo, listen to that new theme. What do you think about it? Tell me what you think. Honestly, I'm still in studio. We're still remixing. I'm your favorite SoundCloud rapper. I'm an actor, improviser, writer, creative multi-hyphenate, and of course, I'm a proud Houston native, and I have the receipts to prove it. You know, I went to Rockets games back when Turbo was still dunking on folks. Remember Turbo? You know, I spent the last decade or so as a comedy writer here in LA, and now, well, I'm podcasting. That's what happens when you hit 10 years out here. You wake up one day realizing you have to moisturize because you live in a desert surrounded by the most beautiful people in the country. And you start podcasting. You moisturize and you podcast. You do both. Welcome to said podcast. Space Cadet Sports was started as a passion project because most media is infuriating as a die-hard long-term fan of the Houston Astros. Here we aren't doom and gloom fans or casual Astros fans, or even worse, the national media haters. We love the team and root them on, but also want to discuss the ins and outs of our team without too much homerism. Key word here is that that's what we want. That's what we try to do here. Welcome, returning listeners, and welcome new listeners to what my brother calls the Paul Broadpod Ball Blog. Hey, brother. Hey, Arrested Development fans as well. Check out spacecadetsports.substack.com for the full blog experience or the full blog experience, depending on your interpretation of how I say that. I feel overly caffeinated. I feel like I even should repeat that. The spacecadetsports.substack.com. I feel like I'm talking too quickly already. Just out the gate. I'm excited about the new theme song. I have a lot of coffee in me. We are recording this transmission here in sunny LA. It's actually sunny after a couple of days of rain. You could hear Carla sighing heavily in the background. She was not happy about that rain. I've already mentioned it, but you know I'm joined, as always, by my co-host and co-producer, the Roz to my Fraser. Carla, the dog, is here with me today in studios. Longtime listeners of the podcast know that she may get on mic from time to time. I do not silence her. She's got the hot takes on this podcast for sure. Folks, I know I'm a day late and $1 short, but if you don't pay me anything, well, I guess that's your fault. You should have paid me. Thank you to all the subscribers on the Substack. But no, I know I am a day late to my regular podcast here, folks. We had some technical difficulties. We've had a lot of things to deal with here at the podcast. I apologize. We almost missed it. I almost had to put out an apology. Just all the things that are happening in my personal life, plus the fact that we are in spring training right now. It seemed like there wasn't a lot to really discuss unless we wanted to really kind of go over some of the topics that we've already discussed in our spring training preview. If you're here wanting to know about the Houston Astros roster coming into spring training, if you want to know about lineup projections, if you want to know about Cam Smith, Jose Altuve, and left, we have all kinds of episodes previously in the feed if you want to jump back on some of those. Today, we will be talking about your Houston Astros. Don't fret, my pet, as Urkel once said. But today, we are very happy to come to you with a little bit of a shorty episode. We are excited to talk about your Houston Dynamo and your Houston Rockets in this episode. That's right. The two teams that don't get very much love on this podcast, or very much attention. They get a lot of love, let's be honest. But baseball and football very much take up a good amount of the podcast feed. So before, we totally get into baseball season, before we totally get into basketball playoffs, today we are going to talk about your Houston Dynamo. That's right, your number one topic. They've made the A block. Dynamo Corner is no longer relegated to the corner. We do not put baby in the corner in this episode. We are going to talk about your Houston Dynamo. We're going to talk about how the Rockets have been faring as of late. I like to joke that I have been jinxing them by discussing them on the podcast. We are going to talk about them. They've slowly been turning it around. I feel like at least they have won a game. We're going to talk about the Dynamo's start of the season. We're going to talk about how the Rockets have fared lately, and we're going to briefly talk about your Houston Astros as well today on the podcast. Before we get any further, before we really get into the nitty gritty, returning listeners know that I want to shout out the Australians. I want to give a big g'day, mates, to the Australian listeners out there. It's a long-term bit. Now, it's not even a bit. I'm serious about this. I'm dead serious. When we first launched here at the podcast, we skyrocketed to the top of the charts, to just outside of the top 100 baseball podcasts in Australia. So because I know I'm kind of a big deal in Australia now, I always like to give a shout out to the Australians out there. If you know any Australians that might listen to the podcast, please let them know we're out here. If you know Astros fans and Houston fans, please let them know we're H-Town repping. But extra points, extra credit if you refer this podcast to an Australian. Extra credit if they're actually in continental Australia. I'm pretty sure that's the only way I can get those numbers to be boosted. But we're gonna get in the top 100. We're one of these days, folks. I know it. Let's get no more joking around. I've had too much fun here. Too much coffee. Too much cafe for your boy today. Let's talk about your Houston Dynamo. And it's been a tough start to the season for you, Houston Dynamo. I know a lot of people out there might be like, where's my Astros content? I know. Look, there's plenty of Astros content on this feed already. Let me talk about the Dynamo just for a little bit. We always spend a little bit of time in Dynamo Corner. Today we're going to talk a little bit more about them. Unfortunately for fans, the longtime supporters of Houston Dynamo FC, the Dynamo have been off to a tough start this season. They are 0-2 after stumbling out the gate, losing the Texas Derby 1-2 at home against FC Dallas. That was no fun. Let's just be honest. There's been some key subtractions to this Houston Dynamo club that has found some success as of late, that has been to the playoffs. We lost, Ajay, who was, this team likes ball control. They're a very big possession team. I think, while Ajay isn't exactly what he used to be, we did lose him. We lost Coco. Coco went off to greener pastures as well. We also lost our goalkeep. We have a new goalie. I'm over here struggling. Clark. That's it. I was like, what's his name? I apologize to Mr. Clark. Oh my God, I'm really struggling to remember the goalie's name. You'd think I would have done my research before going into an all Dynamo podcast. I apologize, folks. I sincerely do apologize. I had his name on the tip of my tongue and I completely forgot. Obviously, I feel like the bigger subtractions were going to be Coco and Ache when it comes to the possession of the ball. I feel like our new goalie is going to find his footing. I think truly. I think the biggest problem right now for the team is that there is not we are an incomplete roster is the best way to put it. We had some key subtractions on the team, but there really wasn't too much to replace the talent in a way that the team felt comfortable with. And already out the gate, just very sloppy play in Dallas in the Texas Derby. Essentially one of the goals that Dallas scored was essentially an own goal. They were really trying to play from the back, as they say. But some of the new defenders, some of the new back line there, when they were passing it around, just an errant ball went to the goalie and, just kind of careened right to Dallas. And that kind of sloppy play, that kind of just bad luck was exactly what Houston had going for it for the rest of that match. It wasn't good. Dallas is not a very good team, and losing the Texas Derby in that opening match at home is not going to inspire a lot of fans to start going out and supporting the team. It doesn't inspire me to think that this roster is ready to play, losing to Dallas like that and losing in such a sloppy style. A lot of fans in Houston, were calling for calling for substitutions already. I feel like there's been a lot of anger around Aliyu, who is essentially playing that wing position, like it's Aliyu, Ponce, and Bassi on the front three for the Houston Dynamo. And a lot of people are not liking this young man's play. They're not liking what we're getting out of him. They're already calling for other players, primarily like Lodero, I believe, is one of the players that they're looking to perhaps take that spot. Nicholas Lodero, who scored in the next game, match day 2, when Houston Dynamo played Inter Miami. And that was a tough one for Dynamo fans because the Inter Messi team showed up to Houston without Messi. Obviously, the Houston Dynamo can't control what Inter Miami does or what Messi does. It's a bit of a slap in the face, from Messi to Houston. A little bit, he doesn't do it. It's not like it's completely intentional. It's not like he's doing it to you personally. But you would like to think that maybe he would treat the fans to a game and show up. But either way, the Dynamo got handed to them, losing 4-1 against Inter Miami. Luis Suarez, Talasco Segovia, definitely Segovia had 2 goals. Suarez had 1. Suarez was all over the place. The team was just overmatched. The Houston Dynamo just did not do well. A lot of people are even saying maybe it's time to start thinking about if ball possession is the way to play. If playing from behind, playing playing back from the back is the way to play. The Houston Dynamo have not had a great start to their season. It doesn't look like this team is complete, and it looks like it could be a really long season until they figure out the personnel here. I don't know if they're a couple of key pieces away. I don't know if the manager needs to, to frankly have a formation switch. Head coach Ben Olsen, a lot of fans have been saying maybe it's time to switch up the tactics. I don't know. What do you think? Is it time for the Dynamo to switch up the tactics? Do you care about the Dynamo? I know I do. I know look, it's not like I'm going to all the Dynamo games or I have all the Dynamo swag, but I love the Dynamo. Let me know what you think about the Dynamo this season, folks. We'll be right back after this quick break.
Houston Astros, Houston Texans, Houston Rockets, Houston Dynamo, Houston everything, Houston born and raised, H-Town Rebel Space Cadet Sports.
Welcome back, Cotter. Welcome back. We have some Houston Rockets to talk about here in this section of the podcast, folks. I am very hesitant. I feel like the more attention I've been giving the Rockets, the tougher their season has gone. But not really. It just feels like that because the longer the season has gone, the more tired and more injuries the Rockets have been piling up here. So let's talk about their last week since we've last talked on the podcast. They played the San Antonio, goodness gracious, Paul. They played the Sacramento Kings. Sorry about that. I was looking at last week already. They lost to the Sacramento Kings. I don't know what is it about the Kings that have just had our number this season and why it frustrates me so much. But that was definitely a tough loss, 113 to 103 at home. The Houston Rockets lost to the Kings after giving the Spurs a whooping, just an absolute butt whooping. And then they lost to the Oklahoma City Thunder. They kind of punted a game against the Thunder. In the game against the Thunder, I mean, nobody really played that game. I'm trying to pull up the box score from that, but like in the Thunder game, nobody was available. It was just obvious that the Rockets were kind of prepping to play the Pacers and give the Pacers their best effort on a back-to-back as opposed to giving the Thunder their best effort and losing. They decided, well, let's kind of punt. They started Jock Landale, they started Reed Shepherd, and Cam Whitmore in that game. There was no Steven Adams, no Dylan Brooks, no Tari Eason, no Şengün, no Amin Thompson, and no Fred Van Vliet. No Cody Zeller either. Cody Zeller is no longer with the team. But, for the fact that, they did not start that many players, and lost 128 to 137, I felt like was a little admirable. Reed Shepherd really went off in that game, had himself a game. I think Reed Shepherd getting some reps in is important. We've been talking about that all season as Rockets fans, and now sometimes for a good time for some reps for Reed. Hashtag reps for Reed. That's what we've all been talking about, folks. It just stinks that it's against such a good team. It stinks that it seems like that game was winnable even with the lineup that we had out there, and somehow the Rockets just couldn't figure it out. The Oklahoma City Thunder were just too good, losing to the first game on that road back-to-back, and then we went to Indianapolis and a heartbreaking loss against the Pacers, 102 to 115 in that game. That made losing to the Pacers and it not seeming like it was going to be that close was very tough for me as a Rockets fan. You were hoping that punting on the Thunder makes it so that we take that second game of the back-to-back. Losing that game of the back-to-back makes that punting seem so much harsher. It's still what I would have done. Calm down. Calmate. I really think that that's what I would have done too, but it just is a tough pill to swallow. I'm not going to sit here and act like that's not the way to do it. I think I completely understand what they were doing. I stand behind it. I think that was a decent enough strategy. It just stunk that we couldn't put the Pacers away. That game was tough. Şengün had 25 points in that game. A lot of people had double-digit points, but it was still just not enough to win that game versus the Pacers. Reed Shepherd had 14 minutes in that game. He only scored 4 points. As opposed to the Oklahoma City Thunder game where Reed Shepherd started, he got 25 points in 31 minutes in that game. I think I'm not saying that Reed Shepherd should have started and that's why they would have won. I'm just saying I think, having Reed in there, getting him some reps, getting him to put up some shots so that hopefully he can become a more efficient player, in these limited minutes. That's what I'm looking at. I'm really hoping that that's where we're landing. Against the Thunder, I'm sorry, against the Pelicans. That was the next game that the Rockets had. They had a night off, and then they went to play the Pelicans and beat the Pelicans 109-97. Something that's been emerging this past week, and something that definitely was talked about after this Pelicans game, is the big lineup. Playing Steven Adams and Şengün out there at the same time. And honestly, this week, I really liked what I saw out of having both of those players on the floor. I don't think it's going to be our starting lineup. I don't think that Steven Adams and Şengün are going to go out there and do Twin Towers or anything. Imagine that, Twin Towers. Okay, we have Steven Adams, Şengün, and we have the Terror Twins out there. Twin Tower Terror Twins, Terry Eason, Amen Thompson, Alpi, and Steven Adams. You know what? And we don't even need a point guard. That's just that's just the lineup they'll run out there. All joking aside, I do like the big lineup, and in limited doses, I really like that big lineup. I like to see head coach Ime Udoka trying that out. What do you think? I love it. I really do. But jokingly saying that we don't have a point guard for that lineup. But right now, obviously, the point guard in that lineup should be Fred VanVleet for the big lineup. But Fred VanVleet is injured again. It looked like he came back from injury. He was trying to play in that game. I believe that was a Kings game that Fred VanVleet played and really kind of pushed through. Yeah, he played 34 minutes, got 3 points. He was 1 for 8, and he just did not look good, and he's back on rest. So Fred VanVleet, while he might not be the most explosive player on the roster, he's not the guy that everybody's talking about. Really, we need a guy like Fred VanVleet to facilitate that offense. There are times, obviously, you're looking against playing a team like the Thunder. There's times where you need a facilitator. We need someone that we trust to put the ball in their hands and get some offense going. And there's times where the Rockets look a little lost. Coach Ime Udoka has talked about it ad nauseum, I feel like, at times, too. So this is no new take or anything like that. It's just that, without Fred VanVleet, there's some times that the Rockets offensively have been stagnant and looking for a playmaker and facilitator. So until Fred comes back, we're really going to have to see who is going to step up in that role in the meantime. Going forward, today is a day off for the Houston Rockets, and tomorrow the Rockets will play the New Orleans Pelicans again. They have another game, and then they have the Magic and Phoenix popping up before next week, and in the back-to-back Friday, Saturday of Dallas and Chicago. And those are all going to be home games, a nice home stretch. They're not back on the road until Wednesday the 19th. So they have some nice time for a nice little home stretch, hopefully to get right. There was a stretch there that the Rockets didn't want to think about it, but they lost, to Sacramento, to Oklahoma, and to the Pacers. They, got a little losing streak going there and really started to get me nervous. I think really when it comes to these Rockets, they're still young. They're still trying to figure out, who is the guy in certain moments. The rise of Amen Thompson. Not that it complicated things in a bad way, but it definitely has added a different kind of look for Coach Udoka to consider in these moments. Without Fred VanVleet, I think there has, definitely limits the Rockets' offense. So, I think until the Rockets are completely healthy, it's going to be really hard to judge what this team can truly do in the playoffs. If they don't get healthy, the Rockets are a very limited team. And, there's a lot of people in the national media that are very dismissive of the Rockets. They were very happy about the Rockets when they were, going through through that kind of media darling moment. They're winning a lot of games. They're a lot of fun to watch. They started to have some injury problems and started to have some offensive issues closing out games. And the Rockets have definitely lost their luster in the national media. A lot of people were disrespecting them. A lot of people are sleeping on them. I think if these Rockets can get healthy, they really can make some noise in the playoffs. However, if they kind of are this iteration of the Rockets where they're dealing with multiple injuries, they're trying to figure out some answers, it is going to be hard to compete with some of the complete teams, some of these teams that know who they are, know their identity, and know who the ball is going to in crunch time. Not that they can't do it, but obviously, as we're rooting for our team here, we're really wanting them to get healthy so that they can figure out this rotation, figure out all these personnel things. That would be obviously in our best interest. Not to John Madden it or anything here, but for these Rockets, for these Rockets to really compete, they're going to have to be healthy. And that's my hot take on the matter. Moving forward here, before we close out the podcast today, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about your Houston Astros. The Astros they beat the Mets yesterday in an exhibition game. Remember, folks, all these spring training games are exhibition games. It's a lot of people are getting excited about some of the play there. Cam Smith has really been doing great obviously in a limited sample size. I've told everybody, that they might want to calmate, but I truly think that Cam Smith is him. I'm not trying to tell everybody that calmate because I think that they need to calm down about Cam Smith. I just think that pushing for him to make the opening day roster and be part of this team might not be the best thing to root for. And I explained that in my previous Cam Smith episode. Basically, the Astros have been not. The Astros have always been hesitant to promote prospects prematurely. Joe Espada has said that he doesn't want to have a prospect that's just riding the bench, essentially. So I'm thinking that unless there is an everyday role for Cam Smith, he will probably not be on not even probably. If there's not an everyday role for Cam Smith, he will not be on the opening day roster. I'll say it with full confidence. That's how I feel about it. I could be wrong. Dana Brown has been aggressive in pulling up prospects. However, with a prospect like Cam Smith, I don't think it's in the best interest of the team to have him start, to have him get regular reps. I don't think they want to have him just ride the bench on a major league level. However, there has been some news that kind of changes that a little bit. While that was my previous take that, I pretty much reiterated what's on the old podcast, Christian Walker has left oblique soreness, which is troublesome. A lot of Astros fans were happy to hear that the Houston Astros front office is actually naming injuries instead of just saying discomfort. And not to go down that rabbit hole too, I've mentioned that ad nauseum in previous podcasts. The Astros don't owe you information about player injuries. The only reason you want to know that is because you either gamble or because you have a fantasy baseball league. Sometimes it's in the team's best interest to not give a bunch of information out so that other teams know how long somebody's going to be on an injured list or stuff like that, is a bit of gamemanship. But in this day and age with, so many people wanting clarity, it's funny. We demand clarity from our baseball teams, but not from, important organizations that have information to give us, So I get it. We do want some clarity. I'm glad for a little bit more clarity here. I always thought it was funny that was something people were really angry about, but I think truly, all joking aside, that's just because of gambling and fantasy sports. But the Astros have said Christian Walker has left oblique soreness. They have been more specific, turning a new leaf perhaps, and they sent Christian Walker to Houston to get an MRI. They're being very cautious here. I do not anticipate Christian Walker is down with a big injury. The wording from Joe Espada hasn't been that alarming. It seems like that they are just protecting their asset here. Yeah, sometimes you got to protect your asset, right? Everybody agrees. But I think it's, Christian Walker is just signed to a new contract. He's going to be with the team for a while. We want him / need him to be healthy. So why force him through some spring training, have him go get an MRI, make sure everything is okay. And if everything is okay and he's feeling good, bring him back. But if not, have him just work at Daikin and get ready for the season maybe. He is going to be a big part of this team going forward, and we do not need to risk his injury because of some exhibition games in spring training. However, a lot of people are saying, because of this, does this open the door for Cam Smith to make the opening day roster? Here's my take for you. I hope not. Now, that's not to say that I do not like Cam Smith or I do not want him on the Astros. If he is on the Astros opening day roster, I'm going to be very proud of him. I'm going to be very happy for him. But if he's on the opening day roster for the Astros, as I previously just stated, I think if he's on there, it's going to be because they have an everyday position for Cam Smith. If they have an everyday position for Cam Smith, that means either Christian Walker or Isaac Paredes is not doing good. There's a major injury in the infield with one of our new big additions and that would be bad. So, or that one of our outfielders is completely gone. Either Chas McCormick or Jake Myers is completely a nothing burger, and they can tell it, and they're bringing up Cam to teach him right field, I should say, on the fly at a major league level, which would not be good for Cam either. Like I said, I'm not trying to be a hater here. I love Cam, but I want him to succeed. If he's sitting here on the bench, he is not succeeding. If he is sitting here learning a new position while playing Major League Baseball, that's not going to add to much success. And if he is just being a substitute player until somebody gets healthy, once somebody comes back, Cam Smith is just going to start riding the bench, or do we send him back down? So that's kind of what I'm thinking. Right now, Cam Smith is a break in case of emergency option. I think Cam Smith is the future of the Houston Astros. I think we should be very excited about him. But I think if they bring up Cam Smith on the opening day roster, that means that something went terribly wrong with roster construction, and that we kind of need everybody on the roster right now to contribute, even if it's just contribute to competition for a roster spot or contributing so that we can trade them. Frankly, we need every ounce of contribution from this roster. From the 40-man roster to the minor leagues. Truly, it's going to be a long season, and we're going to have to battle tooth and nail for that division. So that being said, obviously, we are rooting for Christian Walker's health. We are rooting for Cam Smith to keep doing Cam Smith things. I would like if Cam Smith keeps killing it and crushing it out there and really forces the issue to see if he should be on the roster. That would make me very happy. However, like I said, I'm taking the conservative approach here. If there's not an everyday spot for Cam Smith for the Houston Astros in 2025, I'd rather him get reps at AAA. Let me know what you think, but that's totally my perspective on the matter. Like I said, if he makes the roster, I'm still rooting for him. I'm not going to be like, oh, I got it wrong. I'm against Cam Smith. That's crazy. We love Cam Smith here. We just want him to be completely successful, and we want the organization to be successful as well. We want to win divisions. We want to get back to the World Series. We want the golden era to continue. We don't want just whoever the hot new player is to be playing on the team. We're thinking long-term success here at the Space Cadet Sports Podcast. That also being said, one other little note about the Astros. A lot of people have been cooling on John Singleton and Mauricio Dubon, my Pain and Gain brothers from previous memes. I think there is a reality in which John Singleton doesn't make the roster and he's out of options and he's no longer an Astro. I don't think that's the case for Mauricio Dubon. He's been here for a bit. He definitely is a beloved figure. He is the clubhouse DJ now that Kyle Tucker's gone. I truly think that Mauricio Dubon is going to get his hits. He does what Mauricio Dubon does, which is he doesn't strike out, he doesn't walk, he puts the ball in play. That can be frustrating at times when you're wanting a hit to a specific point, or where you're looking for a home run, or you're just looking to work a walk. But Mauricio Dubon does Mauricio Dubon things, and he is a great utility player. He will be on the team. John Singleton, I think these people that are hating on my boy, Big John Singleton, need to chill out a bit. I think, John is a loved figure here at the podcast, not just because, he was unjustly, really thrown under the bus by Major League Baseball and people's conceptions of marijuana use in this country. He was basically blackballed by baseball because he smoked a doobie, and sure, perhaps he was smoking too much. That's not my business. I'm not going to sit here and speculate to that kind of stuff. I don't know. But really, at the end of the day, the fact of the matter is he was penalized for something that is pretty much like fairly common and fair use now and pretty legal everywhere you go. And in a sport that let people use steroids and HGH and all kinds of things, to penalize somebody that severely, was just a little silly to me. So it's not just because we love him for that and we're rooting him on for that and rooting him on for the success story. John Singleton has a lot of power. He's a left-handed bat, and he can play first base. You can tell that the Astros don't trust a lot of players to play first base. They didn't give Caratini that much. They're hesitant to give Caratini that much time at first. They're hesitant to give Doobie that much time there. They're very hesitant to put Yonner there. I think John Singleton is the backup first baseman, and I think fielding first base is a tough thing, and I think they trust him. And I think for that reason, plus the fact that he's a power lefty, I don't think John Singleton's really going anywhere. I think Rogers or Guillorme would have to really be playing outside of their minds to take his roster spot. I think Zach DeZenzo is more suited to get to get an outfielder roster spot as opposed to an infielder roster spot. And truly, if Cam Smith is needed at the major league level, I'm not sure if they cut ties with John Singleton. I feel like they can find veteran infielders pretty easily. And, as I can tell from a couple of free agent add-ons here during the winter, I'd say that if that happened, they would not like it, but they would probably cut ties with Guillorme and Rogers to make room for Cam Smith. But maybe that's just me. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of the Houston Astros so far in spring training. Folks, I really think, maybe if you think I'm being too conservative here, if you think that we should really go for it, put Cam at the major league level, there is that PPI thing. You do, kind of like Hunter Brown. If you're a top 100 prospect and you're added to an opening day roster, there is draft pick compensation you can get in the new collective bargaining agreement. And we can break that down another day if you have some questions about it. I try not to go too far into the nerdy, analytical, or nitty-gritty baseball stuff. We literally try not to go too inside baseball here. But, while I mentioned that Cam Smith and the Astros might be conservative so that they get him for another arbitration year, if the Astros lose that arbitration year, they could get a draft pick if Cam Smith gets that PPI, if he's eligible for that PPI. And yeah, if you have any questions about that, definitely let me know. We can expand on that. But also let me know what you think about Cam Smith, and if you think I'm off here. If you're more of a proponent of getting him on the roster, let me know your take. Folks, on that that's going to do it for this transmission, Space Cadets. I want to thank you for listening to this podcast, for this Houston Dynamo podcast. We also talked about our Rockets. Very happy to let the Dynamo take the A block, at least for once this year, folks. Once a year, they have to at least be the main story. Please like, rate, review, subscribe, share, bop it, kick it, skip it, hit all of those buttons for me, smash those buttons. I really do appreciate that. We are a small podcast. We only go as far as our listeners take us. We are supported by listeners like you, so please let those Australians and Astros fans and Houston H-Town reppers know that we're out here and we are doing a podcast just for them to make their days better. Check out the Substack at spacecadetsports.substack.com, where you can be a subscriber for free, get every podcast, every blog post, every meme dump, every piece of content there for free. Right now, I don't put any content behind a paywall. That might change as time goes on, of course, but right now I try to give you all of that content for free. You can be a subscriber, of course, to help me pay the bills, help me pay for better equipment and treats for Carla. But you can come here to the Substack and get as much things for free as you can, or you can download the Substack app, search Space Cadet Sports. You see that the orange astronaut pop up there. Hit that you want notifications instead of emails, and you have a mobile experience now instead of the traditional email settings. I like that process more. Once again, that's spacecadetsports.substack.com, or if you want to call in, like an old school radio style call-in show, you can call in. Obviously, we don't do live, maybe one day, but you can call in, let me know your take at SpeakPipe, which is speakpipe.com/spacecadetsports. Let me know what you're thinking out there, folks. Check out my other podcasts. Find me at Paul Salazar JR on all social media platforms. Check us out, the podcast at Space Cadet Sports on Instagram and Threads, and we're on Blue Sky now. Check out Space Cadets at Space Cadet Sports. I should say not at spacecadetsports.bsky.social or at paulsalazarjr.bsky.social. Let us know what you think. Let us know of your takes. Thank you so much for listening. Remember to be the best that you can be. Keep your head up, kid, and as always, vamos Houston.
Houston Texans, Houston Rockets, Houston Dynamo, Houston everything, Houston, born and raised, H-Town Rebels.